Looking for a Santa hat pattern that just uses regular acrylic yarn but still looks fantastic? This crochet tutorial is for you. Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this deluxe Santa hat using only size 4 worsted weight acrylic. To make your deluxe crochet Santa hat, you are going to need 2 colors of yarn, just regular size 4 worsted weight acrylic. I used about 100 grams for the hat, a little bit less, and I used a little bit more than 100 grams for the trim. So 2 balls for the trim, but you'll have some white yarn left over, and 1 ball of red for the hat. I used a 6mm crochet hook for the red yarn for the hat, and I used an 8mm crochet hook for the trim. You can also use 20 stitch markers to make the pom-pom, and you'll need a pair of scissors and a needle for sewing in your ends. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. So we're going to start by making a slip knot and a starting chain, and you want to leave a bit of a tail. We're going to join up our hat at the end with this tail here, so maybe about 8 inches will be plenty. So just make a slip knot with a longer tail and shrink that down, pop it onto your hook, and we're just going to chain the diameter or the circumference of your head. For me, I'm going to be chaining 65. I am an adult size small or a teenager size head. And you can just increase that. Every 4 stitches is about 1 inch. So for me, I'm chaining 65. 1, 2, 3. If you'd like to follow along with the written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secreteyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. So to measure if your chain is the right size, you just want to go around your head where you would be wearing your hat, just across the top. And you can pull it a little bit. Crochet always stretches. So if this was my size, I would have to take a few stitches out. You want to pull it and have it just kind of reaching. Oops, just like that. So that is how you can tell if it is the right size. For me, I am chaining 65, 64, and 65. So there is my starting chain. I'm going to go into the second stitch. So you don't count what's on your hook. This is the first stitch after my hook right here. We're going to be going into the second stitch, and you don't have to worry about going into the back loops. We're just going to go into that top loop because we're also going to be working back into the chain with the brim of the hat. So skipping 1 and into the second chain, we're going to make 1 single crochet and 1 single crochet into the next chain as well. So 2 single crochets, then wrap your yarn. We're going to do a half double crochet into the next stitch and the stitch after. So 2 half double crochets, and now we're going to do a double crochet into each stitch all the way along the rest of our chain. So that was the tricky bit. Now you can pause the video, keep working along. We're going to be making 1 double crochet into each chain, just a regular double crochet into that top loop of each chain, all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get all the way to the end of your chain right over here. At the end of your row, just make sure you go into that last chain with your last double crochet, and that finishes the first row. Now we're just going to lay out our hat in a circle. Let me move it up a bit for you. We don't want any twists. So see how it's like flat all the way around? It doesn't have to be an actual circle. You just want to make sure it doesn't have a twist. You don't want anything like that. You just want the same side of the stitches facing up. And now we're going to look for that first single crochet we made. That is where we're going to work into. So that's on this skinny little bit, the tip of our hat. And that first stitch is right here. That's where we're going to be making our first stitch, or where we're going to be joining. And how we're going to join is with a double crochet. We're going to be working in a spiral. So it's a super easy pattern. This is the tricky bit. So just look for that first single crochet right there, and that's where we're going to do our double crochet. So one double crochet. It looks funny, don't worry about it, just keep going. Ignore everything hanging from your hook. We worked into that first stitch right there. Now we're going to work into the next stitch. So one double crochet, and now we're just doing double crochets all the way around, one into each stitch. And you can tell you've already worked into the stitch if you just follow that double crochet back and then look for that whole entire stitch right there. So the next stitch is over here. It can be easy to put two stitches into one because it looks like that stitch is way off to the side. It's not. So just keep going back. Make sure if you've worked into that stitch, skip it and work in. Well, don't skip it. You've already worked into it. Work into the next stitch. So now you can pause the video, work all the way around, one double crochet into each stitch, just like regular, like usual, and I will meet you when we get right back over here. Isn't that already so great? It's so flat and wonderful. I love it. So pause the video. I'll meet you when you get right back over there. When you get back to where our join is, we have just regular stitches on that top edge, so just ignore what's happening underneath and just work into those stitches on top. One double crochet into each stitch, just straight across that join area, just ignoring that join. We're going to join it, but we're going to do that at the end just to make sure we know exactly how our hat wants to be. So just one double crochet into each stitch all the way around. So that has completed 2 rows right where our join is. Now you can grab your stitch markers, and I'm just going to go around one of these stitches near the join. It doesn't have to be exactly that particular same perfect spot, somewhere in that area. Fold your hat in half from where your stitch marker is. We just want to mark a stitch on the other end as well, or the other side. Just pop a stitch marker so you have one on each side of your hat. And then keep making your one double crochet into each stitch all the way along until you reach the area of the next stitch marker. Now when you get closer to that stitch marker, the stitch marker marks where we're going to do a decrease. So we're going to be decreasing on each end of our hat. So on one side a decrease, on the other side a decrease. And I don't want them exactly stacked on top of each other. I don't want to have a whole seam going on. So I'm just going to pick an area. So for right now, I'm going to do it on top of the stitch marker, but then I'll show you how to kind of space them out or stagger them so it looks the best it can. So into the next stitch, we're going to do a decrease or start our next double crochet. So bring your yarn back, wrap and take off 2, leaving those 2 loops onto your hook. Wrap your yarn and into the next stitch. Grab your yarn and bring it back. So now you have 4 loops. Wrap and take off 2. You have 3 loops. Wrap and take off all 3. So that is your DC2 tog or double crochet decrease right there. And now we're just going to keep going, making 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around until we get closer to the other stitch marker where we're going to do a decrease again. So here we are back at the other stitch marker, and I'm going to do a decrease again. So wrap your yarn and into the first stitch. Bring your yarn back, wrap and take off 2, but you're going to leave those last 2 loops on your hook. And you're going to start a double crochet into the next stitch as well. So insert your hook, bring your yarn back, wrap and take off 2. So you have 3 loops left. Wrap and take off all 3 loops. And if you turn your hook so it's facing down or facing the underneath those stitches, that will make it slide through a lot easier. And now keep going 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around until we reach the next stitch marker on the other side. Now when we get back to where our stitch marker is, our decrease is right here, those cute little stitches together. And this is where we don't want to decrease. We don't want to decrease including that same stitch because it'll make like a bit of a bigger hole along the side of your hat. So wherever our decrease was before, we are avoiding that stitch. So I'm going to work straight over top of our decrease below and the next stitch after, and I'm going to do my decrease on the other side of it, the far side. So you can do your decrease before or after, just not on top. You can see how even that is a larger stitch or larger hole right there. We don't want to decrease into that. So there is a regular stitch into the decrease and after the decrease. And then I'm going to do my decrease, so staggering it. So wrapping and taking off 2, leaving the last 2 on my hook, starting the next double crochet into the next stitch, bringing my hook back, taking off 2, 3 loops left, wrapping, turning my hook so it's facing me, and taking off those 3 loops. And now regular double crochets into each stitch all the way around until you reach the area where your next stitch marker is. Now coming up on the next stitch marker, my decrease is right here. You can see there's 2 stitches at the bottom and only 1 stitch at the top. I don't want to do a decrease into that same stitch. It'll make it too big. So I am going to start my decrease before. I'm going to do these 2 stitches right here for my decrease and then just keep working all the way around until I get to the next stitch marker. So I'm going to decrease before that last decrease. So starting a double crochet into the first stitch, starting a double crochet into the second stitch, wrapping and taking off all 3 loops. So now I have a decrease over here. My last one is over there. See a decrease and a decrease? We just want them to be staggered. I'll just double crochet over top and then I'll show you how it looks. So there is my decrease right here and a decrease right there. So that's how it's going to look, and nice and smooth and flat, just along our 2 edges. So now you can pause the video, just keep working along, staggering that decrease every time you get to the stitch marker area. You can move your stitch markers up when it grows so that you can see that area a little bit easier. And I will meet you when your Santa hat is almost done. After some rows, you can move your stitch marker up just to mark that same center area, that same half. So we know where we want to keep our decreases going. And I've just been staggering my decreases as I work up, a little before, a little after. If you are new to crochet, you can use a stitch marker to mark your decrease. So when you do your decrease, so you start your first, you start your second, finish them together. You can just pop a stitch marker into that stitch. Leave your ones that mark the side. I'm using a different color to mark your stitch. And then you'll know where that decrease is. You'll know to avoid it by a stitch on each side. So not working into the stitch right before, not working into the stitch after. So giving the stitch marker some clearance and just staggering your decreases all the way up. So now pause the video, keep working along, and I will see you when your Santa hat is up here. So I've done 30 rows. This is 31 right up there, and it is pretty small. You could stop sooner if you wanted to. Whatever shape you want on the end of your Santa hat is totally fine. You can do it however you like. For me, I have about 10 stitches left. So this is row 30, and this is row 31 I've started. And it's just kind of tiny now. There's no point of really going on, so I'll just show you a little cheat so we can just finish. So I finished my last stitch, and I'm just going to go in to the other side, so just across that opening. Just into, it doesn't matter which stitch, and I'm just going to slip stitch the top of that hat closed, chain 1 to secure my yarn, and cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a bit of a tail in case I need it to help sew on our pom-pom. Pull your hook up, your yarn through, snug that down to secure. If you are not putting on a pom-pom, you could just sew in your tail, and that would be finished. You can pop out your stitch markers. And we can also sew closed our opening. Let me turn that around, easier to see. So go ahead and grab your yarn needle and thread it. And now we have this join to join together. So I'm just going to go into this corner, just through like that. And that's going to pinch it together so it'll be nice and flat at the bottom. That's the new bottom of the hat. And you can pull that really snug. And now I'm going to go underneath this stitch, over and back up. We want to kind of close this in a little bit, especially along the brim. So up the stitch or down, depending whichever way you're doing it, through a stitch, I suppose, over to the next stitch, through the stitch, and now I want to get this area here a little more secure along the brim because it only has one strand of yarn. And of course, crochet naturally would have more strands. I'm just going to go a little bit back and forth along that join just to strengthen it so it has the same look and feel as crochet. So there is our join. And our spiral is quite nice and flat. And now fold your hat in half so that that join is on the side seam. And now we are ready to attach the brim. To start the brim of your hat, grab your white yarn, and we're going to triple this up. So an easy way to do that is find the center of your yarn. You could also use bulky yarn if you have bulky yarn, but most of us have size 4 weight worsted acrylic. So this is an easy trick for tripling up your yarn. So lay out your yarn so your tail is here, and just put your finger on the other end and bring a loop forward that matches. So we have a tail right here and a loop, so it's an S shape, and we're just going to pinch these 3 strands together and use this as our bulky yarn. So just make a slip knot any which way you normally do with all 3 strands. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook. And now we're just going to chain. So just making a really long chain. We're going to chain up this whole ball of yarn probably, depending on the size of your hat. And when you get to that loop, just put your finger and thumb through the loop and grab your working yarn, the yarn that's coming from your ball, and pull up more yarn from your ball that's coming from my ball, and just make a pile of yarn from your ball. And then you can smooth all that out into 3 strands of yarn. And then just keep chaining. If you want to know exactly how much yarn you're going to need, there's a trick to doing that. If you just want to chain up all of your yarn, go ahead and chain up all of your yarn. If you want to know how many chains you're going to have to make, you're going to need 16 chains for every stitch. So you could count your stitches or just remember your starting chain. I did 65. So you could just grab 65 stitch markers and pop a stitch marker into every 16th chain. And then when you run out of stitch markers, you have chained enough for your hat. Or you can just wing it like I am. So pause the video and either chain 16 chains for every stitch of your hat, or just chain up your ball of yarn. And if you want to see how to use stitch markers to keep track of your chain, I'll show you how to do that when we make the pom-pom. When you've chained up your yarn, find your tail where we began, right over here, and grab your hat. For your hat, you can just use the red color from your hat. For the tutorial, I'm just going to be joining it in green so you can see what I'm doing. Take a long strand of yarn and make it double strand. You're going to need quite a bit to go around your hat, and we don't want to be stitching too loosely, so if in doubt, take more yarn than you think. And I'm just using a blunt tip needle. So thread your yarn onto a yarn needle and just go in anywhere, it doesn't matter. We're just going to go in to 1 stitch And before you pull your yarn through, just go through that loop. So we've attached our yarn like that. You can be using the same color. So you're going to be using red. I'm just using green so you can see what I'm doing in this tutorial. Now grab your chain, and we have our pretty little V's on one side. I want to be going in to the back loops. So if you roll your chain to the side, you can see these camel bumps or these back loops. I want to be going into the very first one, all 3 strands of yarn. I'm just going to bring that all the way down so it's touching my hat. And now I'm going to count 8. So this one already counts where I've gone in. I'm going to count 8 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And put that back loop onto my yarn. You don't have to worry about pulling it all the way down just this minute. And we can get our tails out of the way. I'm just going to tuck mine into my hat so they're not really bothering me. So now we want to count 8 more. So not where we've gone in, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And pop that 8th chain or that 8th back loop onto your needle. So we have a little bit of a M shape or 2 loops, and that's when we're going to go into the next stitch. I'm going to go into the next stitch with my needle, and that's when I'm going to pull these down, but we're going to pull them gently. If we pull them too snug or too tight, it is going to make our hat not stretch to fit on your head. So you want to have them touching the bottom, but you're not snug. So just test it as you go to see if you're making it too tight or too loose. And then just count 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that. So we have our letter M, and we're going to shrink that up onto the edge of our hat and go into the very next stitch. Right there. And just shrink that down so that they're touching but not too tight. So we're going to do that all the way along. So each stitch is going to get 2 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my letter M, shrink that down and move those stitches out of the way, or those chains, so that you can see the next stitch. When you're using the same color yarn, it can be a little trickier. You'll be looking for this string at the back or that yarn at the back and tracing it down to where it comes from. We've worked into this stitch. We're going into the next stitch right there. For now, it's easy to see, but as you get more of these loops added, it's a little bit trickier. So pause the video, keep working along. 2 loops and onto each stitch, and I'll meet you when you get all the way back over here where we began. So as you are working along, it's a bit harder to see which stitch you have to go into next. So just get all those loops out of the way and look at your work. And it's this first stitch here. That is where we're going to be going into. So there's an actual loop going into the stitch we just did. This guy right here, that is our next stitch. So it's kind of on the hill. So always pick that stitch that's on the hill, and that's going to be your next stitch. So pause the video, keep working around, and I'll meet you when you get all the way back where we began. When you reach back to where we began, just go into that last stitch to pin down your last set of 2. And if you did like I did and just kind of winged it, just cut your yarn and pull that last stitch up. If you did it with stitch markers, just finish up those last loops. And now don't worry if you have a different number of stitches or a different number at the end. Just get all those loops in or frog it back, whatever you feel like. And now just sew in your tail. And to sew in your tail, you want to go up your hat, not across. it will, if you go across, it will shrink up or you'll lose the stretch of your hat. So just go up a few stitches to sew in your tail. I'm going to come back and put those in with a sharp tip needle in a few minutes. Now on the other side, our tails from our chain, we can go ahead and knot those. So that's all 6 strands, 3 and 3. And give each one a pull. And then knot it again. So just a double knot. Nice and snug. Really good. Now you can cut these tails off. You can sew them in also if you feel like it. There. I'm just going to sew in these last red tails with my sharp tip needle. Sharp tip needles are linked in the description box on my Amazon store, and they go through the fibers instead of around them, so they really get your tails locked in. There we go, and then you can cut those tails off as well. To make your pom-pom, use your tripled yarn, same as we did before, and make a slip knot. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook. Grab 20 stitch markers, and we're going to chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Roll that chain to the side so we can see our back loops, and just pop a stitch marker into that 10th chain. And chain 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And pop another stitch marker into that last back loop we made right there. So you can pause the video, keep working along until all 20 of your stitch markers are used up. Okay, pop that in somewhere. All right. So now pause the video and just keep working along, doing your sets of 10 chains until all 20 of your stitch markers are used up. When you have used up all your stitch markers or chained 200, we are ready to make our pom-pom. So go ahead and cut your yarn. You want to leave tails long enough to knot. So just pull that yarn through that last chain we made and snug it down. Now you want to take a scrap of yarn, the same color as your hat, 3 or 4 feet folded in half. And we want to go in to that last back loop we made where our stitch marker is, and just put that up on our yarn, leaving a long enough tail. We don't want to pull it all the way through. And then we're just going to do that for the next loop as well, the next back loop with the stitch marker in it, or the 10th chain if you are not using stitch markers. And then just put that together so it's going to make a little bit of a loop. And then count 10 more or go in where your stitch marker is. And just put that back loop on your yarn. And we can pop out our stitch markers. And we just want to do that all the way along our chain. So popping out your stitch marker and threading that loop onto your yarn. So now keep working along, getting each back loop onto your yarn, or each of the ones with a stitch marker, the 10th back loop onto your yarn. And we want to keep it kind of arranged so that your yarn is just in this one side, so you can see it clearly. You don't want it folded over like that. You want to just keep a visual on it. So just take your time and go along, threading each back loop with a stitch marker onto your yarn and keeping your yarn organized to that center thread. You want it to just stay a center thread. So loops on one side, no loops on the other side. and I'll meet you when you have threaded all of your back loops that have a stitch marker. At the end of your chain, you want to go into that very last back loop as well, or the very first one, right where we began. Let's get that last back loop on. Make sure you don't have any loops on the inside of your, what's going to be a pom-pom, and get your white tails, your pom-pom tails out of the way. And we're just going to be working with this threaded yarn, the red yarn. So we can shrink it up and give it a pull. Now there was no loops stuck in there, so we know the center is nice and empty. And we're just going to do a hockey skate knot. So that's the same as a shoelace, just like that, but we're going to do it one more time before we pull. So we loop it twice, and then make sure nothing's in the way, and we're going to pull that nice and snug. The thing about a hockey skate knot, it doesn't slip. It stays tight. And you're using 2 strands of yarn so we can really pull, and that is really snug. Now we can find our center, and now we can just do our regular knot. So I'm going to knot it about 3 times. There we go, in the same spot. That's 2. And 3. Now we can knot our tails from our chain. So there's 3 strands from each side. So there should be 6 strands of yarn from our pom-pom. We're going to knot those, just a double knot. Also nice and snug. Pull as hard as you can. Do that 2 or 3 times. And now we can cut these off. This is going to be right where our hat attaches, so nobody's going to see this. I'm just going to cut them off, leaving about 1/2 inch tails or 1 centimeter tails, just to be sure. And now we are ready to attach it to the hat. I still have my needle attached on one side, and we can go ahead and grab your hat. We just want to make sure the center where our knot is and where we finished off our pom-pom is facing up. Go ahead and grab your hat, and we're just going to go in from one side to the other, like that, with the one tail. And I'm going to thread the other tail and go in the opposite direction. Now I'm going to go from this side to the other side so that they're opposite directions. Just make sure you haven't snagged that yarn, that the yarn still moves with that needle in there, because we obviously still have to tighten everything like that. And now we can just give that a good pull, and we can knot this. Really nice and snug. There we go. So now our pom-pom is attached to the top. Now we just have to get rid of our tails. So I'm just going to put them back through the hat. You could inside out your hat, but it's nice and tiny up here. I don't want to stretch anything out. So I'm just going to thread those tails and just put them right back in where our knot is and put them down out the hat. Give it a little bit of a pull so there's some tension and cut it off. Make sure you don't get your hat, and then just massage it. So now that tail is tucked inside, and we're going to do that with the other 2 tails as well. Just hiding them inside the hat. So right where the knot is, and then out somewhere else. Like that. Pull it a little bit and cut it off. So now our tails are nice and hidden. And there is your super cute, ruffly Santa hat. If you're looking for more fun, fast, and easy crochet Christmas projects, check out that playlist. I am waiting for you up there. They are all super fast, fun, and easy. Stay hooked.